Her true story from California, my daughter screamed, "Get out or I'll call the cops," so I left and called the realtor instead. She thought I had nowhere to go. I had 3 offers by sunset. It was one of those sunny Saturday afternoons that California is known for. The sky was clear, the lawns were freshly cut, and people were gathered outside, laughing and chatting, sipping wine. You could hear their voices float through the open windows like music. Lauren had invited a bunch of people over. Again, some were her co-workers, a few were Eric's golf friends, and the rest were ladies from her local fitness group. I, Evelyn May Collins, stayed where I usually did, in the kitchen, quietly helping out, just out of the way. I had just pulled a tray of warm shortbread cookies from the oven. It was my mother's old recipe, one I've used for years. I carefully placed the cookies on a tray, wiped my hands on my apron, and stepped outside to offer them around. The backyard was full of voices and laughter. Lauren stood in the middle of it all, waving her hands around while she talked, a drink in one hand, and that shiny blonde bob of hers bouncing as she laughed. I caught Eric's eye for a second. He gave me a small smile, then looked away quickly. "Cookies, everyone," I said gently, holding out the tray. A few people took one, more out of politeness than anything. One woman bit into one and nodded, just as Lauren turned to the group and said with a loud chuckle, "Oh, she just kind of stays here," motioning at me like I was part of the furniture. They laughed. Not in a mean way. It was that awkward, nervous kind of laughter. But it hit me hard, like a slap I didn't see coming. I didn't say anything. I just stood there with the tray in my hands, pretending they weren't shaking. Eric didn't say a word. Nobody did. Nobody told her to stop or said it was wrong. So I turned and went back inside. I quietly set the tray down on the counter and spent the rest of the night cleaning up, collecting glasses, scraping plates, washing dishes no one would thank me for. When the last guest left and Lauren's high heels clicked up the stairs, I was still wiping the kitchen counter until it shone. Eric walked by behind me and muttered, "Thanks, Evelyn." Not Mom, not even mother-in-law, just Evelyn. Then he disappeared upstairs too. 3 days later, I was back in that same kitchen, making tea in the morning. I reached into the cupboard for a mug, but my hand bumped a glass on the drying rack. It fell and shattered on the tile floor with a loud, sharp crash. "Damn it," I whispered, bending down to pick up the pieces. I didn't even hear Lauren come in. "What did you do now?" she snapped. "I'm so sorry," I started, but she cut me off with a hand. "You need to know your place," she said, her voice cold and tight. "Don't think you have a right to be here." I looked up at her, still holding pieces of broken glass in my hands. "Oh, please," she went on. "You think just because you're old, you get a free pass? You think cleaning up crumbs earns you a room in this house?" "I didn't mean," I started, but she didn't let me finish. "I swear to God," she hissed, "if you don't get out of this house, I'll call the cops." I froze. Lauren had always been sharp-tongued. She could be rude, yes. But this felt different. It felt dangerous. "I'm your mother," I said quietly. "This is my home." "You think that matters?" she shot back, pulling her phone out of her pocket. "Get out now, or I swear—" I still thought she might be bluffing, until I saw her thumb tap the screen, heard the dial tone, watched her press the phone to her ear. "Hello, yes," she said calmly. "I need to report a trespasser." I didn't wait to hear the rest. I walked right past her, out the back door, into the garden. My garden, the rosemary, the daisies, still blooming, still mine. I stood barefoot in the sunlight, trying to breathe, but the air felt too heavy, too bright. I had planted every flower here, dug every hole, watered every seed, trimmed each branch with care and hope. This garden was the only place left in the house that still felt like mine. But even out there, I could hear her voice behind me, sharp and steady, still on the phone. She was really doing it. She was really calling the police. And in that moment, standing in the garden I had built with my own hands, I finally understood something I'd been avoiding for a long time. Lauren didn't see me as a mother anymore. To her, I was just a problem, an embarrassment, something in her way. And strangely, for the first time since Paul died, I didn't feel old. I didn't feel tired anymore. I felt cold, but wide, awake. This wasn't my home anymore, not really, but it was still my house. And for the first time in a long while, I decided to act like it. I remembered the spring of 1983, the first time Paul and I walked into that old Victorian house tucked away on a quiet street in a sleepy California neighborhood. The paint was peeling, the floors groaned with every step, and the kitchen tiles looked like they hadn't been touched since the 1950s. But to us, it was perfect. It was ours. We'd already been married 16 years by then. 16 years of long hours, small paychecks, and saving every penny we could. We didn't have a fancy honeymoon in Paris. We borrowed a little cabin up north, heated up canned chili on a camp stove, and drank cocoa under one blanket. That was us. Nothing fancy, just full of love and effort. I still remember Paul that day, running his hand along the old wooden banister and grinning like a kid with a dream coming true. "It's got good bones," he said, patting the rail. Like us. And so we bought it, the tired old house with faded shutters and a patchy yard, and slowly, with paint, laughter, and a lot of heart, we made it a home. One summer morning, we were painting the living room together. Paul was up on a ladder in his worn-out jeans, softly humming an old country tune. Our little girl, Lauren, just 6 years old, danced barefoot across the drop cloths, her hair in messy pigtails. "Careful, baby," Paul warned, smiling, "or Mama's going to paint you instead of the walls." She giggled and spun around, a streak of green paint already on her cheek. We didn't have much, but we had warmth. Dinners out on the porch. Halloween costumes I sewed by hand, curtains I made myself. A backyard garden that grew more weeds than vegetables, but I loved it anyway. That house saw everything. It held our laughter, our tears, our late nights helping with school projects and calming fevers. It saw us grow, change, and stick together. It even saw us through the hard times, like the day Paul lost his job and the day he got a new one. Fixing heating units. It was all stitched into the walls, the floors, the very air. And when Paul got sick in 2006, that house became our last chapter together. The stairs got too hard for him, so we turned the downstairs den into a bedroom. I made soup and rubbed his back through the worst of it. And one quiet morning, with sunlight slipping through the blinds, he took his last breath in that room. I stayed in the house for 5 more years after that. Every corner, every creak still carried his voice. Sometimes I'd pass the living room and swear I could hear him humming. But grief has a strange way of draining all the light from even the warmest places. In 2011, Lauren suggested I move in with her and Eric. "It'll be better for both of us," she said. "You won't be alone anymore. We've got the space now." At first, I hesitated. That house was mine. Not fancy, but full of memories and comfort. It even still smelled faintly of Paul's aftershave. But loneliness can play tricks on you. It can make even a haunted place feel like home. So I gave in. I packed up my life, the photo albums, the old dishes, all the small memories, and handed the keys to a property manager to rent out the house. Then I moved into the guest room of Lauren's big 2-story place, telling myself this was a new beginning, a chance to feel close to family again. In the beginning, it felt okay. Lauren made me tea. Eric helped set up my shelves. I thought, maybe this is what healing looks like. But little things started to change. Lauren began moving my things around without asking. My knitting basket vanished. The old clock Paul loved was replaced with a sleek digital one. Slowly, it stopped feeling like our shared home and started to feel like hers. I felt like a guest. Then came the rules. No cooking with garlic. It made the house smell. No TV after 10 p.m. No guests unless she said so. One day she gently told me my garden pots on the patio looked messy, so I took them down, like I always did. I didn't argue. I just adjusted. But inside, something in me was starting to change. There's a special kind of heartbreak that doesn't come from strangers. It comes from someone you raised, someone you once rocked to sleep, someone who once ran to you with scraped knees and tear-streaked cheeks and trusted you to make it better. Still, I kept holding on, telling myself it was temporary, that family meant being patient. But what Lauren didn't know, what she never even thought to ask, was that the old house, the one Paul and I made into a home, still belonged to me. The title, the deed, every wooden board and cracked tile. Even after I left, it was still mine. I never transferred the ownership of that house, not to Lauren, not to anyone. The deed stayed in my name, locked away in a drawer behind old letters and photographs. Because even in those early days, something deep inside me hesitated to trust. The comfort she offered. Maybe it was a mother's instinct. Maybe it was just knowing that some things, like home, aren't meant to be handed over so easily. And as I sat in that small guest room in Lauren's house, remembering Paul's smile, the smell of fresh paint, and the sound of our daughter's laughter echoing through half-painted walls, I realized something. I had already given enough. When Lauren married Eric, I thought it was a blessing. He was polite, soft-spoken, always holding doors and offering to carry the groceries. He seemed kind, the sort of man who never interrupted and always said thank you. But what I didn't see back then was how his silence would become a shield. Not for me, but for Lauren's quiet cruelty. It started small, the way these things often do. "Mom, maybe don't cook with fish sauce. The smell lingers. Let's avoid fried food during the week. It just doesn't feel clean. Can you try to be in your room by 9? We're working on a calming nighttime routine." At first, I said nothing. I didn't want to be a burden. I kept to myself, kept things tidy, folded the laundry tighter than needed, slippers by the door, lights off early, everything in its place. But the rules kept coming. No guests, no music, unless I wore headphones, no drying laundry outside. No new plants. They cluttered the aesthetic. Eventually, I realized that my world had shrunk to one room, and one role, stay invisible. I was allowed to cook, to clean, to water the yard, but not to live in the home, not to leave a mark. I became exactly what Lauren once told her friends I enjoyed being, helpful. But it didn't feel like help. It felt like servitude. She never thanked me. She didn't have to. I swept the porch every morning, packed their lunches when she worked late, watered her rose bushes, even when she forgot they were there. I was the unpaid maid, the quiet shadow in the hallway, but even shadows hear things. One night, I came downstairs quietly to warm up some milk. I paused just at the edge of the kitchen when I heard them talking in the living room. "She's just always there," Lauren said. Eric mumbled something I couldn't quite hear. "She's draining us," she continued. "It's like she's emotional clutter." I froze. My hands trembled around the glass. The hallway felt cold, but my ears burned. Emotional clutter. That's what I'd become to her. Not a mother, not a grieving widow, not a woman just trying to find peace in the only family she had left. Just clutter. I backed away before they noticed me. Sat alone in my room for hours. The milk sat on the nightstand, forgotten. But I didn't say anything. Not the next morning, not the one after. That's the thing about silence. It's not always weakness. Sometimes it's a ledger, and I was taking notes. Lauren didn't yell. That wasn't her style. She preferred the slow drip of disapproval. But one night she slipped. We were having dinner with a couple of Eric's friends, business types, with loud watches and louder opinions. I'd spent all day cooking, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, everything homemade. The kitchen smelled like old holidays, like better times. Midway through the meal, one of the men joked, "This chicken's amazing. Lauren, did you cook it?" Without missing a beat, she laughed. "Oh, God, no, that's our resident freeloader's work." The table went quiet for just a second too long. Then came the forced laughter. I didn't say a word. I just smiled. Eric glanced at me, then looked down. Resident freeloader. That's what she called me. In front of strangers. In the house where I had folded their laundry, packed their meals, cared for their garden. In the house Paul and I built from nothing but hard work and shared dreams. I excused myself before dessert. I didn't cry. I didn't slam doors. But I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, hearing every word she'd ever said stacking themselves like bricks between us. She wasn't the girl I raised. The girl I raised once held my hand during a thunderstorm, whispering, "Don't let go, Mama." She once cried in my lap over a lost teddy bear and told me I was her favorite person in the whole world. That girl was gone. Somewhere along the way, she disappeared, maybe replaced by ambition, by resentment, by a version of adulthood that didn't have room for me anymore. She built a life that had no space for softness, no room for anyone but herself. But she forgot one important thing. This house, the one she filled with fancy furniture and meal kits, it still belonged to me. It always had. And the woman she now called a freeloader, that was me. And I still had the deed. It all started on a quiet Thursday afternoon. The sun was sliding lazily through the blinds, and the house smelled lightly of lemon cleaner. I was folding laundry, mine, Lauren's, even Eric's. I'd matched their socks too. Old habits die hard, I guess. Lauren walked into the room holding a sleek-looking folder. She sat down across from me, crossed her legs like she was about to sell me something. "Mom," she said smoothly, "I need a favor." I looked up from the laundry. "What kind of favor?" She gave me that tight smile, one that never really reached her eyes. "Oh, it's nothing big. Just some paperwork. It's about the house." My body went stiff. "What about it?" I asked. "It would just make things easier if it were in my name," she said, all casual. "You know, for taxes, refinancing, stuff like that. Nothing would change. You'd still live here, of course." "Still live here? In my own house?" "I don't think that's necessary," I said softly, folding a towel slowly, making sure every edge lined up just right. Lauren let out a sigh, like I was being difficult. "It's just a signature. You wouldn't even have to leave the house. Walter could notarize it, if he's even still alive." I looked her right in the eye. The silence between us was heavy. "No," I said. She repeated the word, like it offended her. "No? No, Lauren. This house is still in my name. Your father and I built it together. I'm not signing it away." Her mouth tightened, and without another word, she stood up and left the room. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. A week later, the bank called. They had questions about a mortgage application linked to my address. Confused, I asked what was going on. That's when I found out Lauren had tried to take out a loan using my house as collateral. But she didn't stop there. She forged documents, pretending to be the owner, said she'd inherited the house, claimed she was caring for her elderly mother and managing all my finances. I asked the bank for copies. They must have sensed something was off because they sent them. And there it was, my daughter's signature on paperwork saying this house belonged to her, that I was just some old woman she was helping. My hands were shaking as I held the papers. This wasn't just disrespect anymore. This was theft. That night I confronted her. I didn't yell. I kept calm. "I talked to the bank," I said, standing in her spotless kitchen. "I know what you did." She didn't flinch, just poured herself a glass of water. "You shouldn't be messing with things you don't understand, Mom." "I understand perfectly," I said. You tried to steal this house." She leaned against the counter, took a sip, then put the glass down. "Look," she snapped, "you're not getting any younger. You don't work. You don't help. All you do is take up space." "I clean this house," I said. "I cook. I take care of things." "You exist," she cut in, "like wallpaper." That one hit hard, but I didn't back down. "My name is still on that deed," I said. For a split second, something crossed her face. Panic, anger, maybe even fear. Then she let out a dry, humorless laugh. "You think that matters?" she said. "You think that piece of paper means anything? You don't own this house, Mom. Not really. You live here because we let you." She kept going. "I felt sorry for you, okay? I thought maybe it'd be nice to have family around, but no one kept you here out of love." Each word hit me like a rock to the chest, but she wasn't done. "And if you won't cooperate," she said, stepping closer, "then maybe you shouldn't be here at all." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means," she said slowly, like she was spelling it out for a child, "you have 1 week to leave. Or I'll call the police and say you're trespassing." That was the moment I realized it wasn't just that she wanted me out. She wanted everything. The house, the memories, the story of our family. She wanted the freedom to wipe me out, like I never existed. She mistook my silence for defeat. But she forgot one thing. I'm still the one who owns this house. I wasn't trespassing. That land, the floors beneath her feet, they were mine. I owned it, every inch. It was just after 3 a.m. when I quietly got out of bed. I didn't make a sound. I moved slowly, carefully. I'd played this moment over and over in my mind for weeks. The house was silent. Eric was probably fast asleep upstairs. Lauren too, or maybe not. She had a habit of staying up late, scrolling through her phone until the battery died. Whatever she was doing, I didn't care anymore. I opened my closet and pulled out a small suitcase I hadn't touched in years. I packed only what I needed. A few clean clothes, my old leather wallet, the marriage certificate Paul and I signed back in 1967, and his death certificate. And most importantly, the deed to the house, my house. As I packed, my hand brushed against a photo I kept in a silver frame by my bed. Paul, smiling like a young boy in his wedding suit, and me in that cream-colored dress my mama helped me sew. I wrapped the photo in cloth, gently, like it was something breakable, and placed it inside the suitcase. Then I sat at my little desk and wrote a note. I didn't write much. I didn't need to. "Lauren, I don't hate you, but I'm done begging for space in a home I paid for with my life. I have nothing left to give, and nothing left to ask." I folded the note and left it under the porcelain teapot on the kitchen counter, the one she never touched. Then I put on my shoes, opened the back door, and stepped out. The early spring air was cool and carried that strange mix of jasmine and pavement. I didn't look back once. I walked down the quiet street, my suitcase softly rolling behind me. I checked into a small motel off the highway. Nothing fancy, just clean and simple, the kind of place where no one asks questions if you pay in cash. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the plastic-wrapped cups by the sink and the flickering TV playing some late-night show with the sound off. Then I reached into my handbag and pulled out a card I'd been holding on to for years. Walter Brenner, retired attorney, Paul's best friend since high school. He'd been there at our wedding, when Paul got sick, when Paul passed. Thank God, he was still alive. I dialed his number. "Evelyn," he said, voice sleepy but alert. "Everything okay?" "I need to talk," I said. "Today." He didn't ask questions, just said, 10 a.m., my place. I barely slept that night, not because I was scared, but because I felt calm. A deep kind of calm that comes when you finally close the last page of a long, painful chapter. At 9:45 a.m., I stood at Walter's front door. His little bungalow was surrounded by citrus trees and buzzing hummingbirds. He opened the door in a cardigan and slippers, his reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. "Come in," he said with a little smile. "You look like hell, but honestly, you always did first thing in the morning." I laughed, for the first time in weeks. We sat at his kitchen table, and I laid out the papers, the deed, the original purchase agreement from 1983, the property tax bills, all with my name on them. "She tried to take it from you," Walter muttered, flipping through the stack. "But she can't. Legally, she's got nothing. This house is yours, Evelyn, every inch of it." "I want to sell it," I said, "as soon as possible." He raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." He didn't try to talk me out of it. He just nodded. "I'll handle the paperwork. You'll need a realtor." "I already know someone," I said. After I left Walter's house, I walked 2 blocks to a little real estate office with a glass door and a lavender sign that read, "Jessica Tran Realty." Jessica was young and full of energy, early 30s probably. She was the daughter of a woman I used to work with at the library. I remembered her as a girl, doing homework in the reading corner after school. I told her what I needed. "I want it listed this week. No delays, no open houses, just show it to serious buyers only." Jessica blinked but nodded. "Understood. I'll handle it personally." That evening we met at the house, my house. I stayed in the car while she walked around the property, taking photos and scribbling notes. I couldn't bring myself to go inside. Not anymore. When she returned, she handed me a clipboard. "The market's hot," she said. "You'll get multiple offers if we move fast." First, she held out a pen. "You'll need to authorize the listing," Jessica said. I took the pen. I thought maybe I'd hesitate, that my hand might shake, that guilt would catch me mid-stroke. But it didn't. My signature came out clean, firm. My heart, even steadier. The sound of that pen scratching across the paper, it was the softest rebellion I'd ever made. And, yet, it was the loudest thing I'd ever said to my daughter. That night, I didn't go back to the same motel. I booked a new room downtown, a bit closer to the heart of the city. I left the curtains open as I lay in bed, letting the soft, humming glow of streetlights spill in. For the first time in years, I wasn't sleeping under someone else's roof. I was sleeping under my own sky, reclaiming my breath, my name, my life. Jessica worked faster than I expected, faster than I dared hope. At exactly 8:14 a.m., the listing went live. Just 3 crisp, high-res photos. A simple, elegant description of the property's charm, character, and potential. No mention of current occupants. Just charming 3-bedroom Victorian, mature, garden. Thoughtful upgrades. First time on market since 1983. By 10 a.m., her phone was buzzing nonstop. By noon, she'd already done 3 virtual showings, 2 cash buyers from out of state, and a young couple moving here for work. By 4 p.m., we had 3 offers, each one full price or above. The first offer came from a tech guy looking for a place to disconnect. The second, from 2 sisters hoping to renovate and flip it. The third, from a woman named Diane, mid-50s, newly divorced, recently came into a settlement. She just wanted a place to start fresh. I chose Diane. Not because she offered the most, though she did. All cash, no fuss. But because of how she spoke to Jessica. Her voice had that quiet, worn-out strength. Tired, kind, and firm, like mine once. Jessica texted me the contract. I read every word in silence, my reading glasses low on my nose, my hands calm. I clicked sign, and just like that, it was done. By sunset, the house was no longer mine. But more importantly, it was no longer hers either. I sat in my motel room, the sky outside slipping into hues of lavender and steel. Light crept through the blinds as the city stretched into evening. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Lauren. I didn't answer. Another call, 20 minutes later, then another, and another. By the time I finished brushing my teeth, she'd called 7 times. No voicemails, no texts. She didn't want to explain anything. She wanted control. I silenced the phone and placed it face down beside me. The next morning, Lauren's world shifted. At exactly 8:30 a.m., a courier rang her doorbell. He handed her a certified envelope. Inside, the signed, notarized legal transfer of ownership. Effective immediately, the property now belonged to Diane Westfield. Tucked inside was also a formal notice to vacate. 7 days. If they didn't leave, the new owner had every right to pursue legal eviction. The sender, M. Collins. Not Mom, not Evelyn, just M. Collins. I imagine Lauren stood there for a while, flipping through the pages, trying to find a mistake, a loophole, a missed signature. But there wasn't one. What she never understood, what she still doesn't understand, is that I didn't need to scream. I just needed to remember what was mine, and then quietly take it back. By noon, Jessica texted me. Got a voicemail from someone claiming to be the homeowner. Panicked tone. I assume it's her. Lauren had tried to block the sale, called the office pretending it was her house. Jessica replied without hesitation. All documentation has been verified and filed with county records. Miss Collins is the sole legal owner and has executed her rights in full capacity. This conversation is over. Then Lauren tried me again. 8 times. Left one message. Mom, what are you doing? You can't sell this house. We live here. Are you losing your mind? Call me back, please. This isn't funny. That word again. We. She never said you. Never once. You built this. You lived here first. Or even, I'm sorry. No, in her mind it was always we live here. We are being pushed out. But the truth is, it was never we. It was just her. And me. Alone. By dinner time, my phone had rung 24 times. I didn't pick up once. Outside, the traffic looked like fireflies trapped in glass, crawling down glowing roads. Inside, I drank the same tea Paul used to make on stormy nights. Lauren didn't call again. She knew by then I wasn't bluffing, and I wasn't coming back. As I walked past the front yard, the sprinklers gave a last little hiss before shutting off. Just then, I heard a low voice from behind the bushes say, "Is that the daughter getting kicked out?" By Friday, the whole neighborhood was buzzing with gossip. She's being evicted. No, she's just squatting. Can you believe her mom sold the house without telling her? I thought that place was in the family forever. But the cruelest rumor, the one that stayed in, the air long after everyone went inside, was, imagine being thrown out of your own mother's house. People whispered like it was a TV drama. That morning, she came out of the house wearing sunglasses, bright lipstick, and holding her head high, trying to look strong. But anyone who really looked could see the truth. Dark bags under her eyes, a tight jaw, like she was holding back tears. She moved slowly, dragging out the packing, like she was hoping someone, anyone, might stop her. Maybe she hoped I'd change my mind. Maybe she thought some miracle would suddenly make everything okay again, even after all these years. But no miracle came, just silence, and a moving truck she had to pay for herself. She finally pulled her 2 shiny Samsonite suitcases down the steps, packed full. Her phone was in her hand like a lifeline. It buzzed every few minutes, but not from me, just spam, random numbers. She called me again and again. I never answered. Not because I wanted to be mean, but because I had already said everything I needed to say. She never really listened anyway. She only talked at me, not with me. So this time, my silence said more than words ever could. Eric didn't lift a finger to help her. He stood next to the car, arms crossed, eyes far away. When she tried to hand him one of the bags, he backed away. "I'm going to my mother's," he said, cold as ice. Lauren blinked. "Eric," she started, but he cut her off, just shook. His head got in the car and drove off. And then she was alone, standing on the curb, 2 bags, a phone, no answers. Later that night, around 9 p.m., there was a knock at the gate of my new apartment. I had just made some mint and chamomile tea. The city lights flickered outside my window, tall buildings glowing like candles. My new home smelled like fresh wood and calm, the kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. I looked at the security monitor. It was Lauren. Her makeup was smudged. No sunglasses this time. Her eyes were swollen and red. She buzzed the gate again, then knelt down right there on the sidewalk. For a while, she didn't say anything. She just looked up at the camera, lips shaking. Then she finally spoke. "Mom, I'm sorry, I didn't move. Please," she whispered. "Just let me in, just for a little while. I have nowhere else to go." The intercom stayed quiet. She put her hands together, like she used to when she was 5 and praying for a new bike. Like that same trick might work now. "Please, Mom." I watched for a moment. Then I walked to the window and gently pulled the curtain closed. I didn't feel angry, just sure. She had taught me something I never wanted to learn, that sometimes even the people you love most can cross a line. And once they do, sometimes you can't go back. My new apartment was on the 24th floor, right in the heart of the city. Up high, above the noise, but close enough to still see the world. The skyline stretched out like a friend. Neon lights blinked. Taxi horns sang. The buildings stood tall and still, like quiet sentinels in the wind. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine, paid in full with the money from selling the house. First thing I did was set up a small herb garden on the balcony, mostly mint. Paul used to love the smell. Some mornings, I'd crush a leaf between my fingers and breathe it in while sipping my coffee. It felt peaceful, not silent like loneliness, quiet like rest. One evening, I made a cup of mint tea, wrapped a shawl around my shoulders, and looked out the window as the city slowly dipped into soft colors of dusk, lavender and deep blue. Then my phone buzzed. Lauren again. Her name lit up the screen. I watched it ring. Once. I didn't answer, just flipped the phone face down on the table. 10 minutes later, the intercom buzzed. I looked at the monitor. She was there again. Her coat was too thin for the chilly night air, her hair messy. She was holding a worn duffel bag and standing under the dim streetlight. The streetlight above her flickered like someone who had simply run out of time. "Mom," she said into the speaker, her voice shaky, almost breaking. "Please let me stay, just for a little while, just until I figure things out." I didn't answer right away. I just watched her from the monitor, shifting from one foot to the other, hugging herself from the cold. She looked lost, like someone who'd used up all her chances and was only now realizing it. She had burned every bridge, thinking she'd never need to go back over them. I stepped out onto the balcony. She looked up and saw me. For a moment, her face lit up with hope, the kind of hope that makes your heart ache because you know you're about to be the one to put that light out. I didn't speak for a while. I just looked at her. Then finally, in a soft, steady voice, the same calm voice she used to mistake for weakness, I said, "Don't ever think you can fool an old woman, especially your own mother." Then I added, "No one steps into the same river twice." She looked up at me, her eyes wide, and then they dropped. She nodded once, like she finally got it. I went back inside, picked up my cup of tea, and gently pulled the curtain closed behind me. I didn't watch her walk away. I didn't need to. The truth is, I had left a long time ago. If you've ever been hurt by the same person you raised, if you've stood in a house you paid for and still felt like you didn't belong, if you've cooked the meals, folded the clothes, tended the garden, and been told you were just in the way, then maybe you'll understand what I mean when I say this. Silence isn't weakness. It's memory sharpening its blade. I used to think being loyal meant staying quiet. When Lauren first rolled her eyes at me in front of her friends, I said nothing. When she started making all the decisions and left me out of everything, I smiled and went along with it. When she laughed at me like I was just some piece of furniture, I let it go. Again and again, I forgave her, because I'm her mother. And that's what mothers do. Until one day, we don't. It's easy to love your child when they're little, when their mistakes are harmless and their words don't cut deep. But what happens when that child grows up and decides you're just taking up space? What do you do when the baby you once rocked to sleep turns around and says, "You're just a freeloader. You don't even own this house. Get out or I'll call the cops"? Here's what I did. I got quiet. I got calm. And I remembered who I was long before she forgot. I picked up the phone. I called the lawyer. I called the realtor. And I sold the house, not out of anger, out of truth. Because when someone uses your silence to build their throne, the most powerful thing you can do is stand up. Now I sit by the window in my new apartment, way up on the 24th floor. I bought it with the money from the sale. Mint plants grow in little pots on the balcony. The city hums below me, and I hum right back. Sometimes the phone still rings. Sometimes it's Lauren. Sometimes it's just ghosts. But I don't answer anymore, because I'm not the woman who begged to be seen. I'm the woman who remembered what she was worth and took it. And if you've ever stayed silent too long, if you've swallowed your pain just to keep the peace, if your grown child, your spouse, or your own sister ever made you feel like you didn't matter, then let me say what you couldn't. Let me be the voice you never used. Let me speak the truth from that night they slammed the door. Subscribe to Her Stories by Emma. Because here, revenge doesn't need to scream. Here, we write, we record, we remember, so loud and so clear that the world can't ignore us. Because in this place, silence isn't weakness, it's justice, and justice? She wears pearls and sips her tea slowly.